Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about conflict and plot. Okay, so let's start with conflict. And when we talk about conflict in a story, it's kind of the same as when we talk about conflict in real life. We're talking about the problem in the story. Okay, so make sure you're filling in that blank right now. All right, so let's look at an example. What is the conflict? Abby and her best friend Megan are working together on a group project. Abby did not do any work, leaving it all for Megan to do. When the girls get together to do the project, Megan finds out Abby did not do any work. She becomes angry, yells at Abby, and storms out of the room. All right, so I want to know, what's my problem here? What is the problem in the story? When we think about conflict, we want to think about the original problem that kind of caused any other issues, okay? So our conflict here, if I'm looking, I want to know what caused the little original problem, and I see that it's Abby did not do any work, leaving it all for Megan to do, and that's what leads to this fight. So I'm going to say Abby did not do any of her work, and that makes Megan angry. All right, and I want to see everyone filling in. Whoop, I didn't want to do that. Sorry guys, technical difficulties. I want to see everyone filling in that blank for me. All right, so there are two types of conflict, okay? Internal conflicts and external conflicts, all right? Now, internal or inside conflicts happen inside your own mind, okay? So these are issues that are happening inside your thoughts, inside your feelings, okay? Internal means inner, inside, okay? So let's look at a couple examples of internal conflicts. Mary stood in front of the mirror, looking worriedly at herself. She wondered desperately why she wasn't prettier. This is an issue with Mary's self-esteem and her feeling sad, okay? So those are internal conflicts. All right, James walked to class nervously fidgeting. Why do I never do my work ahead of time? Why do I always procrastinate? He thought frantically, hoping the teacher wouldn't ask him to present today. All right, so with James, once again, internal conflict. This is not an issue between him and anyone else. This is something he did for himself. He did not do his work, and now he's concerned and nervous that he's going to be called on. All right, now, external is the opposite. External means outside, and these are conflicts that occur between our main character and someone or something else. So let's fill that in. Okay, so maybe we have a conflict between you and a friend, or between you and a lion, okay? But it's outside of yourself. It's not just happening inside of your own mind. So when Abby and Megan got into a fight up here, that was an external conflict. It was between two people. All right, now let's look at some examples of external conflicts. I walked in the cafeteria. Spotting John, I tried to sit as far away from him as I could. He saw me anyways. Walking up, he said loudly, "Hey, idiot," and kicked my backpack under the table. All right, so here we have an external conflict between John and our narrator. Okay, so John is bullying our narrator. Let's look at our second example. As I walked home from the bus stop, the rain pounded against me and I shivered in the cold. All right, so this one, even though it's not between two people, it's still an external conflict because our narrator is in conflict with nature. Okay, so let's look at some examples here and decide whether they're internal or external. All right. Jim and Mac disagreed about where they should take the dog they found. So we have two people, Jim and Mac, and they're in a disagreement with each other. Okay, so I'm going to say that it's external because it's happening outside of themselves. It's not just going on inside their own heads. All right, let's look at our next one. Carly struggled to walk through the hot, blowing sand. So here we have an external conflict against nature. Okay, so she's battling against the hot, blowing sand. Now, let's look at my next one. After Mary Ann's brother had teased her about being afraid, she had decided to climb the cliff. Now, she stood at the foot of the cliff, wishing she could figure out a way to back out. Now, this one's a little trickier. So, we have an internal conflict to start it out. An external conflict to start out. Mary Ann's brother had teased her about being afraid. So that's a conflict between her and her brother. So that's external. But now we have Mary Ann at the foot of a cliff trying to figure a way out. So now it's become an internal conflict inside of her where she's committed to do this and now she's trying to back out on it. Okay, so I'm going to say this one is both. All right, now conflicts are very important because without conflict, we wouldn't have a story. Okay, conflict makes stories interesting. All right, that's what we're focused on in a story. We're focused on the problem. We're focused on how we're going to solve that. Okay, so when we look at a story, we're talking about the plot of that story. All right, so plot is the events that happen in the story, okay? And all stories have a plot, and that plot is divided up into 5 parts, no matter what story you're reading, okay? Now, plots are driven by conflict or the problem in the story. So that's why conflict is so important to our plot, okay? That's what makes everything happen. All right, so let's talk about the 5 parts of plot, okay? And you've probably seen this before, hopefully. So the very beginning of our story is called the exposition, okay? And this is when we introduce the setting and the characters, okay? So fill in those 2 blanks for me, setting and characters. So usually this is if you're reading a short story, it might be the first paragraph. If you're reading a novel, it might be the first couple chapters. This is when we introduce our main character, maybe, her best friend or the love interest or the family, all right, and where we are, okay? So exposition, setting, and characters. Now, usually after the setting and characters, we'll usually get the conflict, all right? And the rising actions are the events that result from that story's conflict. So this is usually when it starts to get a little bit more exciting. Okay, we have a problem, stuff starts to happen because of it, all right, and the rising action leads up to what we call the climax. Now, the climax is the turning point of the story. Okay, and I like to say this is when stuff is either going to get better for our characters or it's going to get worse. Okay, this is the turning point. We have all these problems building up, all right, and then we get to the top, and it's the most exciting part, and it's either going to get a lot better or it's going to get a lot worse. Okay, now after that, it's pretty simple. Following actions are the events that result from the climax. All right, and then the resolution is the end of the story. Now, the end of the story means that we'll usually solve my original conflict. That's when we have a happy ending to a story, when our original problem gets fixed. However, we can have a sad ending to a story when the conflict is not solved and we're left with just a sad ending. Or it can be a cliffhanger, okay, where they might introduce a new conflict and leave you hanging, or leave us hanging about the resolution to the original conflict. All right, so we're going to talk about plot and conflict in The Giver a lot, all right, to help us kind of get a grasp on how these ideas apply to our story. And we're going to practice this a lot with some more stories over the next couple weeks. But I want you to have an idea of what each of these words mean, okay, and that's what we need to know for our test next week. All right, so let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you tomorrow.